WVTC Radio Detroit. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, our website, www.wvtcradio.com, or download our WVTC app from the Play Store for Android users and the App Store for iPhone users.
This is
Soulful Inspiration.
It's your girl, Nikki Jones. This will be an hour to feed your soul with music and laughter, information and inspiration. You're listening to WVTC
Detroit.
All designed with you in mind. So sit back, relax, and get ready to join the conversation with me,
Nikki Jones.
Soulful.
Soulful Inspiration.
Inspirations. Yes, sir. Welcome to Soulful Inspirations. I am your girl, Nikki Jones. So excited to see you tonight. So excited to be here tonight in the land of the living. Hallelujah. Yes, we are here on WVTC Detroit, winning victory through Christ. And we are excited about our show on tonight. Today's installation of celebrations will be brought to you with My Sister, Your Sister live podcast recording on tonight. Yes. So excited. Listen, before we get into that, I would like to personally thank Mother Wright, who was here for me a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to thank her for coming by and filling in for me because I did not have a guest and I had some things to do. So just like, any other host, she is welcome. I hope you guys made her feel welcome. She did tell me some things that I had to take care of at home, but nevertheless, I just wanted to thank her for her hospitality and for being here and being such a gracious guest host on last week. So I hope you guys enjoyed her. I certainly got some good feedback, and so she will be back. I just wanted to let you guys know that she sends her love and that she is eager to come back. So yeah, we'll probably bring her back another time. So anyway, thank you again for receiving her, and let me know if you when you guys want to have her back. I can have her back whenever you guys want her to come back. We can have her back. So just let me know when you guys want Mother Wright to come back, because she won't lead you wrong. Mother Wright won't lead you wrong. Okay. All right. So now tonight, as I was saying earlier, this is the third week of the month. And on the third Tuesday, we have our live recording of our My Sister, Your Sister podcast. And my sisters are in the building and on the line. Come on in, Sister Michelle. Come on in. Yes. How art thou?
Thou'th is well. How are thou'th? Hey.
Hey, that is my sister Michelle Johnson. And to my left and your right, you will see the wonderful Randy Butler. Yes, we've been missing her, but life happens and family comes first. So we understand the reasons for her absence, but we are so glad to see her tonight. And to my right and your left is the wonderful Tamra Fontaine Hardy. Yes. These women are professional women, along with myself. We are all in the professional field of some sort. And the purpose of the My Sister, Your Sister podcast is to come together and talk about things that affect us, whether they be spiritual, natural, professional, mental, emotional, whatever the case may be. Three of us are married, one of us is single. And so we have a plethora of things that we can always talk about. And so tonight we want to continue this conversation. It's just been a huge topic for us to talk about church hurt. And we've had some interesting conversations. And so the last time we had a conversation about church hurt, we invited this wonderful person. And I promise you, if you Google him, or if you on Instagram, or if you're on Facebook and you search Dr. Zeb Talley the Third, or Zeb the Third, you will find some interesting information. You will find some preaching, because I found that. Did you find some preaching? I found some preaching. The man can preach. Okay. I found some very interesting advice, some really good coaching advice, just some really life advice. And he has tons of reels that you can listen to and watch, and very, very good advice. I would like to welcome, along with my sisters here again, because he's just such a wealth of information, Dr. Zeb Talley the Third. Hello.
Hey, Dr. Zeb.
How are you?
I'm here. I'm glad to be here. In fact, I hope everybody's doing well.
Yeah.
We are doing well. I need you to come a little bit closer to whatever microphone you're using,
How about that? Is that
or either
better?
turn it up a little bit.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's better. That's much better. Thank you, sir. So how was your week, sir?
It was interesting. Strep throat last week, so I was on bed rest.
Uh-oh.
Playing catch up over the last 48 hours, but glad to be here.
Yeah, well, you don't sound like what you've been through, huh?
There you go.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. Really honored to be back again, and looking forward to tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what I normally do is I turn it over, because I don't usually drive this session when we do our podcast. I leave the driving to one of my capable sisters, and the one who will be driving on tonight is the one and only Michelle Johnson, in the corner over there, in the right corner.
I just want to thank all the little people first, giving honor to God for this valuable position. This is not something that I take lightly nor expected, but when he calls, you answer.
Hello.
So I have been thinking a lot, Dr. Zeb, about our conversation last time. I mean, outside the cold showers. And what I do is I gradually go to cold. So I start warm and go to cold. I don't start all cold, because chocolate at a certain temperature freezes. So I kind of get gradual. But I was thinking a lot about the conversation we were having about church hurt, and I was going through some of your reels. And one of the reels that I stopped on today was your group session. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering to myself, all of the things that we were talking about last week, would it be beneficial for us, folks who have experienced church hurt in different ways? Would it be valuable to be in a room to talk about what tools, what ways in which we can detangle ourselves from this church hurt and be able to fully embrace going back to church, getting back into activities? And when I saw your reel about the group, I wonder would that help? Would that, we didn't leave off with any kind of like real fundamental, like this is, thing. But what do you think about this idea of folks getting together with a facilitator like yourself and kind of walk through how we can heal from church hurt?
Sure. I think, and I appreciate that question and bringing it up. Group work I started group work in May. And it's really based on a concept that's very similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I've got a really good friend of mine that I work with who went to Alcoholics Anonymous 7 or 8 years ago. She's been sober. And she and I had some very candid conversations about her experience in this, 12-step program that is not something you do in a silo, but you do with other people who are also dealing with the same things. And so I created group work to offer group coaching and counseling to folks in a small 12-person setting. And we talk about a lot of different things. In fact, there really is no set topic. I allow each person to go around and they share what's challenging them. And I try to walk them through some things, but in a community setting, virtually. And it's really about the power of community. And that's not a lost spiritual concept. The Bible tells us that we're overcome the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. A testimony is not a testimony if it is not spoken among an audience of other people to receive it. And so the whole concept of being able to share what you're dealing with among other people is really about positioning yourself to be empowered by somebody who hears it, who probably had the same challenge as well. And so I think, a concept like group work would be perfect for, people who are thinking about getting back into church, who maybe, experience what they call church hurt, but being around other believers who've experienced similar things. And this is the important thing. Group work, community settings like that only work when people have a mindset of wanting to be healed. That's important. Because I set the tone of my sessions and I tell them that if this isn't a community of like-minded people who have similar goals, then it becomes a gossip session. And that's not going to be beneficial. And so it has to be a session where people come together to say, the goal really is to be, to be healed from all of this pain and things that we've experienced in the past, and really connect with other like-minded people who want to kind of push us forward. But it absolutely can work. Community is a very powerful way of healing from just about anything, because most of us have not gone through what we dealt with alone by ourselves, right? And really being connected to other people really helps to kind of push us through.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Because we're focused today on men in particular, do you think that would be a good setting for men who typically hold their feelings in and they really don't share, to have that setting for men to be able to express themselves in an open forum like that? Do you think that would work?
Yes, ma'am. I think it would be incredibly impactful for men. I can't remember if I said this the last time we were on, but most of my clients are women. Not surprisingly, most of the attendees in the church are women, not surprisingly, right? Because for some reason, especially in the Black church and with Black men, we associate therapy and counseling, and to some extent, even religion, as practices that minimize masculinity, and they don't. And so men being in a circle or a tribe connected with other men who have challenges and being able to hear one another is incredibly powerful. And so I wouldn't disagree with you at all. It's my hope. I've put out the pleas for this a lot, and I've got some current clients that are helping me really market what I do to more men, because I do want more men as clients. I think when men solve their problems, families solve problems.
Come on now.
I agree. That's good.
Bigger issue than just a person being corrected. I try to get men to understand that when you fix you really fix a generation. And it's you've got to see it that way when you're thinking about getting work on yourself, whether it be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or whatever kind of work that you do. And so, yes, I think it would be very beneficial for men to participate in something like this.
So when you think about the men that, okay, so you do have some men, right, that you counsel or that you coach. So are you coaching any men who have shared something about church hurt, whether it was, the wife not respecting them as much as they respect, the pastor? Yeah, he's laughing. Or something about the pastor is, driving a Jag and everybody else driving Pintos and escorts. I mean, what has been your experience with men in terms of church hurt and, whether it's, the musicians or whether it's the effeminate men in the church, so they don't want to be there, or is it the, the Hebrew? What I've seen is a lot of the Hebrew Israelites now, the reason that men are flocking to them is because of that. It's because of the masculinity side to it. It's because of the side of Hebrew Israelites that cater to that community and to the masculine man. What has been your experience with that?
All of the above. That's why I couldn't hold in my laugh.
I couldn't hold his peace at all.
He couldn't hold
at all. He didn't even have a poker face.
No, I couldn't hold it in. I've heard all of those things. I have, and you know, I've heard them individually from men, but I've heard them collectively in like group marriage counseling.
Okay.
When I counsel couples that are engaged in preparing for marriage, we have conversations about spirituality. It's not necessarily just church, but it's spirituality. And I think I always phrase it that way because the divorce rate is not absent from the church. So going to church ain't gonna fix your marriage.
Correct.
Come on now.
And that hurts a lot of feelings, but it's not. Folks are getting divorced in church just like they're getting divorced if you don't go to church.
Absolutely.
Spirituality encompasses more than just going to church, and believers struggle with that for some odd reason. They struggle with that, and so when I have conversations with couples, especially, that comes up. And one of the things I try to get women to understand. I love y'all in advance.
Help us today.
Come on now.
Help us, doctor. Help us.
Try to get women to understand this. If you're married, especially, that pastor is not your priority.
Come
You
on.
better say it now.
He's not.
Say that again.
Yes,
for the
sir.
people in the back of the church.
And he's not. He's not your priority. Your husband is. And if you get to a point in your marriage where that pastor is more important than your husband, or serving in that church is more important than serving your husband, either you married the wrong man or you're out of order.
Come on.
Ooh-wee.
But isn't that the case with when it comes to church hurt anyways, that people assign too much authority, priority, and importance to the wrong people?
Absolutely. We have it so backwards. And, you know, as a PK and a third generation PK, my grandfather was a bishop, father's a pastor. I watched it done well, especially from my father, because his number one priority was his wife. And it really taught me a lot about serving and what serving looks like when you are working in ministry and you have a spouse and who's prioritized. And I tell people all the time, if you're serving, you're a man in church and you're serving your pastor and you're married, your pastor shouldn't be walking the baby to the car while you taking the pastor's stuff to his car. It doesn't make sense.
Come on.
And we have abused this in church and called it things like sonship, foolishness, and you're out of order. If you have a wife and you're an adjutant to a pastor, your first duty is to make sure your wife is taken care of.
Yes, sir.
If you're a woman and you have a husband and you're serving the first lady, that's fine. But your job is to make sure that your husband and your household that is your first ministry.
That's right.
And we don't teach this anymore in church.
No.
We teach it, and we get shocked when men don't want to come to church because a man looks over at his wife and looks at how his wife responds to the pastor. And doesn't even fix his plate at home. And we're out of order. So it starts in the church. I have that conversation a lot. That, you know, the conversation about effeminate men comes up a lot. I know in my ministry, we had an incredible amount of people from the LGBT, I'm going to get this right, LGBTQIA community that was involved in our ministry. And I believe it was not because we didn't teach and the truth. It was because we did it and we empowered people through love. And here's the thing. From that end of the spectrum to having some of the city's largest drug dealers in my ministry, I'm here to tell you they can all be in the same space when you teach people how to know God and love God under the guise of loving everybody. Now, it sounds real MLK-ish. I get it, but it's very possible. And just blessed to have been a part of a lot of conversations along that lines. And look, I believe that the devil, if you believe in the devil, I do. I believe the devil is after the family unit.
Absolutely.
Oh, agree.
Absolutely.
Wholeheartedly.
He's after the family unit. And that comes in a lot of different ways, not just divorce. It also comes in lifestyles, lifestyle choices. It comes in a variety of different fashions. And we have to be very careful with that. But I don't believe we have to eliminate someone's desire to be who they've been called to be because we live in a time where everything is accepted. Now, I know this is going to be tight for some people.
Come on now.
Yeah.
But
Like Spanx.
everything, if you go to a buffet, which I don't like buffets, thank God my kids don't like the buffets anymore. They used to, but if you go to a buffet, they don't just put certain things on the buffet. They put everything on the buffet.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we've got to stop being so sensitive and so critical of people who do not see things the way we see them, who do not agree with us, who do not perceive things to be the same way. I boast all the time and say I've got friends that are believers. I have friends in my circle who are atheists to this day, who call me, who have spiritual questions. And they say, Doc, I know you can answer this. What do you think? And we are some of the best of friends. And I'm not offended. And somehow along the way, in this whole church hurt conversation, it's this underlining generational thing we're dealing with. We are in one of the most sensitive times that exist.
Agree.
Very sensitive.
Agree.
And that's a blessing in one regard, in that everybody's voice is heard. Everybody's given the opportunity to express how they feel. It's a curse in the other hand, in that people can't handle opinions and perspectives that don't align with what they think. And let me shut up.
That's both ways.
Because I don't want to miss a point. Two things. I think when you talk about sensitivity and critical, I think you were sensitive and critical. I think self-centeredness need to be added to that list, because I think with church hurt, sometimes, and even for a period of time when I had church hurt, I thought my hurt was deeper than you couldn't get no deeper than the hurt that I was having. And I was centering myself as the hurtest.
Yep.
You hear me? And you've been in the room, the virtual room with me, Doc, so you know I have a flair for the dramatics. So I was like deep in my church hurt. And that can, and I think the devil uses those things to keep you bound up. And I don't think we're often honest with us being that self-centered in our own hurt, and keep telling people, trying to top the other person's hurt story. Like somebody will tell their hurt story and you try to top it. You know what I mean? Like, no, that ain't it. See, the pastor kicked me and threw me through water. You just try to add an extra. How do you untangle the self-centeredness? If you're the sensitivity and being critical is one thing, but it's very hard to untie that self-centeredness, because oftentimes if we're talking to a very few people who are hurt, and we all are lost in our own way. How do you detangle that? How do you give someone advice to be like, how do I get out of my own way of that, so that I could get on the pathway of healing? How do I get?
Yeah, I think we need to understand the difference between equity and equality, fairness and equity. I don't want to turn this into an academic conversation, but even in the line of professional work that I do, I think this generation, to your point, my friend, really struggles with understanding what it means to be fair versus what it means to be operating in equity or equality. And the reality is, equity is when anybody is given an equal chance. Okay. Fairness is not necessarily the same. And one of the things I think we do is we bleed the two, right? We say, if I just think of a random example, use my kids as an example, 9 and 10. I can't get one of them something without getting the other one something, right? Because if I'm in the house and one of them has something, then the other one says, well, where's mine? Well, Problem, son, is that when I picked up this dress for your daughter, they didn't quite have a dress your style. So was I supposed to go to a different store to find you something so I could come home and say, you both can have something? Or was it okay for me that given I was in a particular store at that time, and saw something that was best aligned for your sister, that I just picked it up for her because she needed it? Oh, and by the way, doesn't have as many summer clothes as you have. I think the same problem exists with us as a society. Everybody wants everything to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of the matter is we don't all need the same things.
Mm. Oh, you better come on.
That's good.
This is where my research was in. That hurts people. But this is the difference between the generations, right? When we talk now, which is, I should know this. I'm brain fried.
Alpha? Is it Alpha?
Generation Z. You got you got millennials, Gen X, boomers, lost. I think that's right. Y'all forgive me if I got it wrong. I know this stuff, I promise, has been a day. But this is where we mess it up. Because if you go back and talk to our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers, they'll tell you there was no such a thing as fairness.
Absolutely.
They
As a boomer, I agree.
For whomever, given whatever situation, and they let the chips fall where they may.
Yep.
And as time progressed and opportunities open, we've got to put technology into this. Technology, I think, plays a huge role into why the generations see things the way they do, why they are so big on, I should be able to get a trophy if I show up, versus I get a trophy if I win. Those are two different things.
Yes,
One
sir.
is fair, one is equitable.
That's right.
It's not the same. And I think this just bleeds into the church conversation where, regardless of age, because I really appreciate your candid way in which you said that, hey, I felt like my hurt was more, I had more hurtness, I think was the word you said, I had more hurtness than anybody else. That was so spot on, because it's really a reflection of the times that we really absorb things as if our stuff is greater than everybody's, when really
Right.
it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah. Can we kind of go back to the conversation talking about when men show up at the table, though, and it's very difficult to pull out of a man when he feels hurt. How do you bridge that conversation when you're trying to talk to a man or a woman, for that matter, about their church hurt, and I don't know what word to use, but convince them that it's okay
To
to
talk
come
about
back,
it.
to talk
to come
about
by
it,
Okay.
to talk about it, and it's okay to talk about it in the church setting, and that they don't have to. I mean, if you just want to do bedside Baptist, that's okay. But some folks be like, I'm not stepping back. I'm not putting my foot back in a church. And they don't even want to talk about it. I mean, you start talking about it, they get angry because, of course, that hurt is still very palpable. It's still very real. They don't even want to have the conversation. So how do you heal or help them to heal if they don't even want to talk about it?
Great question. The first thing I do, I think I'll start with women, because I think it's easier. Women typically tend to be more willing to talk. And
We don't shut up.
It is. I didn't say that.
Me neither.
We will talk until we get it right.
Okay, or you get it wrong, and
that part too.
You get it right. It's so funny. My clients, I really have women really feeling some kind of way sometimes, but it's really to challenge them. Feminine energy is very open. It's open. It's free, which is why women tend to be better communicators when it comes to expressing feelings and emotions, things like that. So with women, it tends to be a little bit easier to get them to open up. But I do want to tackle this men's side, because we said something earlier that I almost forgot, and that I think this is, as fate would have it, a perfect time to mention. When I'm talking to men about hurt in general, church hurt doesn't matter. The first thing that I deal with, number one, to get them to open up, is we define what masculine energy is.
Mm.
And I think that's
Let's
great.
do that.
I think that's critical because the Hebrew Israelites have been able to be successful in garnering the interest of men, Black men specifically, as it relates to their message. And part of that is this portrayal of what is perceived masculine energy. But hear me, this isn't disrespectful to any group. Again, I've got friends who are Hebrew Israelites. I got friends who are everything, and I love it. I always tell people my funeral is going to be a big old buffet because everybody's going to be there. But I'll say this, masculine energy isn't necessarily loud. Masculine energy isn't this imagery that we have of Superman in a cape that's tough, never cries, doesn't talk, or whatever. I would highly suggest everybody read the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It is a multi-time New York bestseller, Times bestseller.
Yeah.
It is masculine energy, feminine energy 101. If you've never heard the terms, read the book. It explains it in great depth and goes into what masculine energy looks like. It doesn't use words like hard. It uses words like confident. Those are two different things. It doesn't use words like tough. It uses words like resilient. Those are two different things. And so I think how we define masculinity is critical because when we understand the definition of it, there's another term that we should understand for both of the sexes, and that is wounded masculinity. So when femininity or when feminine energy is wounded, you go from being blah, 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 to don't talk to me, leave me alone. Case in point, you get an argument with your husband, your boyfriend, whatever.
That's right.
You blah, blah, blah. He's finally reached and got on your nerves, and you say, shut up, don't talk to me. You walk off, and then you shut down, and you don't want to talk. Wait a minute. You were just talking to us for 40 minutes straight. But it is because something inside of you through that conversation has become wounded, and your response is to shut down what is a strength of yours. The same thing happens for masculine energy. Masculine energy, when it is in esteem, is very sure. It's very confident. It's willing to be outspoken if necessary. But when masculine energy is wounded, masculine energy becomes very timid. Masculine energy, much like feminine energy, becomes very reserved and to itself, which is why when guys say, oh, I'm hurt, I just don't, or I'm pissed off, I don't want to talk, give me a second, they think they're being masculine. What they don't realize is they're operating in wounded masculine energy. Shutting down as a man is antithetical to masculine energy because masculine energy is problem solving. Masculine energy is figuring it out. And so if a man all of a sudden doesn't want to solve a problem or don't want to have anything to do with something or just want to completely shut down and back off, he's wounded. And this is challenging for men that don't know what real masculine and feminine energy is.
That's good.
So the same thing applies to church hurt, right? If a man's been hurt in the church, the best thing he can do for his pastor is have a conversation.
Right.
Because especially if assuming that pastor, regardless if that pastor is a man or a woman, but especially if that pastor is a man is going to appreciate the conversation of another wounded man because it creates an opportunity for them to deal with the issue. But what tends to happen is men become feminine when they get hurt in church. Listen to what I said. They become feminine because they run. That's feminine energy.
Wow.
When a man has an argument with a woman and he slams the door and walks out the house and gets in his car to go away, to quote unquote cool down, that's feminine energy. Because you cannot solve a problem running away.
You just messed up a whole lot of men.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. And he messed up a few women too. And you know what? Go ahead, doctor.
I want to say this real quick because I want to hear what you're going to say. I want to say this because it applies to women too. Women, if you're in an argument with him and he's trying to solve it, but you mad now, and your voice gets louder and louder, and you're trying to
higher and higher.
He can't even say 2 words because you're cutting him off and you're going off. That's masculine energy. And what tends to happen in that dynamic? It's the roles reverse. Y'all arguing, he shuts down, you get louder.
That's perverted.
When he shuts down, he officially has become the woman because he's receiving. And when you get louder, you have officially become the man because you loud.
Yeah, you messed me up. Now I got to go be reprogrammed.
We all in here in our feelings right now, like, oh Lord Jesus. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you for coming on. And God bless.
But let me get to this point. Let me get to this point. 2 things, and I hope I don't forget and transfer into some masculine energy. Say, no, I'm joking, Doc. But I think that's, I think intuitively when I hear you say that, I understand it.
Yes.
And that's because, let's be clear, 75% or more of the households are led by women. So children are left to be raised by women in those cases. Men may not play as of a present role, or the father may not play a present role. I mean, but it's a fact that in our country, women are largely the heads of households. So they got to be concerned about childcare. They got to be concerned. They problem solving. They got to worry about childcare. They got to go worry about food. They got to worry about how to get to the job. They got to worry about transportation. They problem solving. And so do you feel like within this church hurt, and with that being said, I think sometimes we see every problem as the nail and we're using the hammer when it's something else. Yeah. So how does a person flip and reverse that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what my question was.
And I think another key that you mentioned is language. And I've been hearing that consistently. Mm-hmm. The type of language we use when we get engaged in communication can either be enlightening.
Yes.
It can be for growth.
Yes.
Or it can deepen trauma and have people revert. So can you talk about those two? I don't know how you good at tying stuff together, because you don't mess me up with this feminine and masculine energy. I didn't even guess you was going that way. But can you talk about that
I think that's incredible. I'm not just saying that to blow your head. I think your questions are incredible because that is a very real thing. When a woman has to be the man and the woman, it's hard to tell her to cut the man off.
Right. When
being the man sometimes pays the bills, takes care of the kids, provides for the family, especially if she doesn't have another provider in that home. And so I think this is where coaching and therapy is really important. I tell any woman that's had to be both man and the woman, even if you are living a great life, great career, your kids are well, everybody's healthy, things are, if you desire to have a man in your life, get some therapy.
I know that's right.
Amen.
Because you need to have someone walk with you through what it means to really deprogram and deconstruct these wires that have been so firm that frankly, and I want to say this to your credit, that frankly, if they were not as firm, maybe your children wouldn't have been successful. I have friends who have grown children who are doing well, who had to raise them on their own, women friends that had to raise them on their own. Their kids are successful and doing well. And they had to be man and woman. And if they were not man and woman, you get what I mean when I say that.
Right.
Those kids would not have been as successful as they were. So this isn't a statement to diminish what women have done. But it is to say to you that the same thing that I've said to her, I think is relevant. If you want a man and you want a strong man to come in and lead that home and lead that structure, you're probably going to have to be deprogrammed from having to be it all to be able to just rest in your feminine and just rest in being, you know,
That's a t-shirt.
you know,
Rest in my feminine.
yeah, you see it in social media a lot. You
that.
know, a lot of women will post pictures now and they'll say things like, I'm entering my soft girl era. I think that's really cute, right? What they're saying is I've had to be it all. Now I'm
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I am there, like right where you are right now.
Yeah.
I'm there because my husband is a talker, and I'm the person that will shut down when we have conflict. I'm just being honest. I could be transparent.
Yeah.
But that's where I am now because I have been the mother and father in a lot of cases. So deconstructing or debunking what has been set up in me over 20 years is not going to happen. First of all, it ain't gonna happen overnight. And I have been through therapy and I have gone through therapists and I do see a therapist off and on, but that I didn't see that as a focus point. I was just trying to make sure I was ready for marriage. You know, I was trying to make sure that I was healed from the past relationship as opposed to getting ready to go into this new relationship and deprogramming myself from being, you know, from having that feminine and masculine energy and being more on one side than the other. So I guess my question is, what would be your, just in case he's listening, what would be your advice to my husband, who is probably like, this chick is crazy and she's menopausal. So on top of all of that, you know, what would be your advice to a man who is dealing with a woman who has that masculine energy going more than that feminine energy?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing question. And thank you for your transparency, for real. I think both of you have to go on this journey together. And because the reality of the matter is it takes masculine and feminine energy for there to be a maintenance of attraction, to be a maintenance of good friendship and solid interaction. It requires both, yin yang. You can't have a peanut butter and jelly without both, sandwich without both. Like it just requires both. So I think both of you have to go on this journey together. And the other thing I would say to you is this. The easiest, clearest illustration I can share is this. When two people come together, there is attraction built. They meet at a certain point that allows them to be at the same place. Life happens, right? You have children, you get married, you go through menopause, you go through all kinds of different things, right? And you're still two separate beings, but you're going in the same direction. But when life happens, right? Menopause, children, whatever, what tends to happen is the man could be veering this way and the woman can be veering this way. Right? But the most important thing is that the fingers are pointing in the same direction and one's not up and the other one's down.
Okay.
Because when this is happening, you're going forward, they're going backwards. That's when divorce comes.
Okay.
When two people are moving in the same direction, and even if life and health and physics and all of that stuff happens, you're doing whatever, that's fine. As long as eventually you veer back together and end up in the same direction is all that matters, which is why one person getting therapy and the other person not getting therapy, in my opinion, is incredibly challenging. Because what tends to happen is when people are growing, if only one of them gets some assistance for the growth and the direction and path that their life is going, and the other one doesn't get that assistance, you end up leaving the other one behind. Right? So I would say that I think it would be great. I don't know if he's open to coaching, therapy, counseling. I think it would be great if you both did some sessions together, because I think as a man, especially if he's never done it before, doing it in a group, it might create some safety for him to feel open to be able to share some things. He may want to do a session by himself first. I've had men who are married who now do group counseling with me and their spouses, but first did a session with me by themselves because they wanted to feel it. Like, hold on, bro, I want to feel what this is about, right?
Right.
Kind of like putting your toe in the water before you jump in, right? I want to just make sure.
Or buying some new clothes. You want to make sure.
you want to just make sure it's good. But I would highly recommend that because people change in relationships. But
So,
divorces don't come because of menopause, and it doesn't come because children come. Divorces come because when that road comes to split them, what tends to happen is one of them just turn and end up going the opposite direction, and the other one keeps forward. Instead of realizing that you can go and life is going to happen and situations are going to come. But as long as you come back and join together and end up in the same direction, that's perfectly fine.
Dr. Zeb, Nikki just said something that reminded me.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about church hurt, and it's something you said about deconstructing.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought, well, when you're deconstructing the hurt in a church, it's rarely about what the pastor said. It's rarely about what the person did to you, but it's about something in them that they did that triggered a hurt that happened years ago. And they're associating that church hurt with something that they felt or something that happened to them a long time ago. But then they're assigning that hurt to this spot, this day. And when you try to sit down and have that conversation, they can't move forward because they're only dealing with that moment, but the hurt happened years prior. And so something triggered, and the only way to get to that hurt, to pull them back to go in the right direction, is to deal with the foundation of the hurt, where it happened at, the real hurt.
Started.
Where
So that was part of what I wanted to ask like 20 minutes ago. Hi, Dr. Zeb.
No, you're not saying
I've been receiving. Amen. Praise God. A lot of times when we talk about church hurt, we're talking about abuse of power. Whether it's the pastor or the leader, whether they meant to do it or not, it's an abuse of power. But also, I don't normally hear people focus on the individual giving up their power and why they were vulnerable to that situation. So do you run across this situation where you minister to the person who gave up their power, who, was vulnerable, or who had, past hurts that triggered it, something to that effect?
Yes, that's an amazing question. And it's typically a pattern of people who have been in situations where they have had to prove their worth or value. A lot of people who end up being very susceptible to church hurt or church abuse, who have come from abusive families or families where mom or dad wasn't present, or they were present, but they weren't active, or they had these childhood wounds of having to please their folks. And so they've always been in the mode of pleasing others. Those people are ripe candidates for church abuse and abusers that are in church. And I think you said something that's powerful. You said whether people meant it or not. I think that's incredibly important because some people have been the victims of church hurt that was not intentional. Okay? And then some people have been the victim of church hurt from just flat out abusers. People who, couldn't make it in industry, got a church, and they just abused their power. And I don't want to get on this soapbox, but this is why I'm a big proponent of every pastor having a trade. Now, people don't like this, but I'm going to say this anyway. Paul's a tent maker. His name's Zeb, well-known fisherman being symbolic of being able to win people. Most of the disciples had a trade tag.
That's so true.
Bill collector. The Black church is the only place that we promote people based on a gift. We give them no leadership training, and then when they abuse power, we're shocked. They've never been able to manage authority in the real world.
Who are you preaching?
I know.
If people could learn how to manage authority in the real world, then you wouldn't become a pastor and it go to your head.
We say that all the time in the business world. You give just because someone can follow directions.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean they're ready to lead people.
Right. And we historically do that. We do it all the
time. And then we don't understand why people walking around wounded because you put someone who was not a leader in a position to lead, and they did not lead. What they did was hurt.
Yeah, because it's not valued.
Yeah,
it's not a value, particularly in the society that we live in. I mean, leadership is pinned towards capitalism. is not pinned towards community, in my opinion. And I think, Dr. Zeb, it's important to understand language, because when people say servant leadership, I think people misconstrue what that really means and what that really looks like. Because it's more than just the process. It's about the people too. It's about doing a thing, but still holding people at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think language does matter, and I don't want to lose, Randy. I don't want to lose your point. I don't. I think language matters, and I think language then sometimes wakes up, to Randy's point, wounds that are already there. The word trigger has become very triggering for me.
Say more about that. So we're not going to be trigger.
Because people are using it and don't really have a clear understanding.
Yes, I agree with that.
Trigger, gaslight, just
especially gaslighting.
All of that.
Buzzwords, manipulation. These are the buzzwords. But Randy brings up a point that has to be covered here. And that is, if we saw, heard, or something the preacher said that offended us so much to the point where we couldn't come back, if we saw that exchange as an awakening of something that was already there, people wouldn't leave the church. This is what I tell people. When you're triggered, a trigger is a sign to you that something is dysfunctional.
That's already in you.
That's already there.
Yeah.
I didn't plan it. So when I curse you out and you get offended because the pastor cursed you out and you leave church, no, that offense, to the extent that you want to leave a ministry and no longer serve, no longer be in church, that offense, what I did when I cursed at you was just woke up something that was already inside of you. That's it. A trigger is nothing more than the revelation of dysfunction
that you had compartmentalized and did not deal with.
Compartmentalized. Some of us hide it. Some of us mask it. Some of us shout over it.
You better come on.
When does it become about you having and being accountable for that, as opposed to playing? And I hate to say this, but sometimes we go to that victim mentality and they play the victim instead of being accountable for taking their healing.
I think everybody that goes to a church, and I think especially even church leaders and senior leaders, have to have, I'm a firm believer that you have to have conversations and even sometimes messages that are very honest, that are very candid, and are very brutal. I don't think every Sunday should be a hellfire and brimstone Sunday. I don't believe that. But I do believe every now and then you ought to have conversations on topics and discussions, especially as it relates to behavior and Christian behavior, to really remind people that all of us are a work in progress.
Yes.
And that the problems that we have, if somebody offends you, chances are they just woke up a wound that was already there.
So how do you deconstruct that? How do you, once you
like
recognize,
that word, deconstruct?
Yeah, because you got it on my mind right now. But no, getting to the bottom of it, when you're sitting there and all of a sudden you have this awakening, where do you start?
I think we have to be very honest with ourselves. It's the easiest way to move beyond something that triggers us, because a trigger typically causes a reaction in our emotions. And so when something triggers us, it sparks a feeling. Right? Anger, sadness, happiness, whatever. Triggers aren't always necessarily bad. Triggers can be good too. And I talk to my clients about positive triggers as well. There's certain things my playlist is real ratchet. I'm gonna be honest with you. It ain't just gospel in there. I got a little bit of everything in my playlist. But I've got a playlist thing called green water music. It's called green water music. And so if you've ever been to the Dominican Republic, places where the water is bluish green, there's a certain music that they play out there. It's like a merengue. They play it all day, every day. And so sometimes when I'm working around the house, I have that music blasting in my house, and it triggers positive thoughts of me being on somebody's beach restaurant. I wish I was doing right now. Triggers can be positive and negative. They can, but it requires us to be very honest with our emotions and how those things make us feel, and sitting with them for a while. This is the challenge in the church. We don't teach people how to sit with emotions. What we do is tell them Jesus is going to make a way. And we tell them to stand up, turn around 3 times, shout, and it's going to feel better. Problem is, all we've done is taken them through an emotional roller coaster that when it's over, they have to sit down and deal with the realities of their lives.
It's still there.
You know, and we criticize. I want to say this softly, but I want to be real loud here. We criticize white churches for not having loud bands, not having loud music, not having those things. They have conversations. And those conversations make you shut up without the noise and think about what you heard. Oftentimes in the Black church, between the band, the lights, the preaching, the screaming, and everything else we do, that is in many parts connected to our culture, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in all of that noise, we don't have an opportunity to sit in the stillness of quietness and think about what we heard. I got Bible for this. In fact, it was God that looked at the folks and said, listen, I ain't in the wind, I ain't in the whirlwind, I ain't in the hurricane, I ain't in none of that, but in a still small voice.
Yep.
It was a powerful lesson. And that is sometimes in order to hear God, you got to shut the noise down.
Absolutely.
We can detangle and deconstruct. We can deconstruct a lot of this stuff that triggers us
by getting quiet
down and sitting down somewhere and quiet and
be still.
And be still.
That's what Randy
I'm gonna go and thank my mama right now because she always told me to shut up and sit down and think about it.
You know what? But that's so fun. You saying that, but that's true. About how powerful and smart our grandmothers and grandfathers.
You're right.
With
Randy just said, "Blessed quietness."
Yeah.
Eighth grade educations. My grandma would say the same thing to us if we were over her house. She would be like, "Boy, y'all go in there, sit down, shut up, and be quiet."
Yep.
And we wanted to play, but when you sat down, you could think. You can
adjust.
You can adjust. And we're missing that.
Okay, we out of time. Okay.
You know, that's why I love to go to the beach, because when you go to the beach, all you have is the water, and it is quiet.
I cut my phone off.
You can't get service on your phone.
I cut it off.
And it forces you to just be still.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Be still and know.
Yep.
I am God. Yes.
It's there. We have all the clues that we need to quiet down those. If we're going to deconstruct triggers and the emotions that come with that, spend some time by yourself. Church is great. Nothing wrong with that. But take that word, go home, sit in the room somewhere for 30 minutes and really process what you heard.
Yes.
And that is a tool.
That is.
And it takes practice. It takes so much practice to do that. Dr. Zeb, man, hold on,
Nikki. Hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I will pass the mic back.
Oh, my bad.
You gave me the mic.
Let's do this right.
Didn't the good doctor talking about order and that masculine energy?
I'm waiting on the baton. I'm standing here. I got it.
So,
that just rocked my world. I just want to say that while I'm still going crazy over there.
Your sister podcast. I'm gonna pass it back to Nikki.
She is so
the original holder. Close us out.
I ain't got no triggers over here. Dr. Zeb, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and your insight and your wisdom. It is much needed, and I'm certainly praying for the success of your business. And I will be pointing men towards you. I know you do. You counsel people everywhere, right? Not just in your local assemblies. Yes,
everything is virtual.
Everything's virtual. Okay, good. So I will definitely be pointing people in your direction because I believe that you have a lot to offer. And I know I don't speak just for myself when I say we appreciate your wisdom and your time on tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who has been.
And before he goes, Nikki, can you please share with us the link if someone wants to participate in your community conversation.
Oh, go on his Instagram. It's right there. You click on it. It's got.
This is the
Well, I was on there.
Right there. It is.
Sit in that.
If
I
you
think
do
it would be wonderful.
at Zeb
third.
ZB the third.
That's right.
Zeb the third.
To
So
our
at
listening
Zeb the
audience.
third. Yes.
To our listening
At
audience.
Zeb the third. ZEBTHE 3RD.
Yep.
Correct.
Exactly right. And I've got group work this Saturday at 12.
From
At
12
noon.
to 2.
Noon to 2 this Saturday. Eastern Standard Time.
Dr. Zeb, please welcome Michelle in. 'Cause she
Need some group work.
She needs some.
She gonna need some group work, but I need you to have her on mute at all times.
Please.
I love it. I love it. She is more than
You
welcome.
figure some
More
stuff
than
in her, 'cause now she's thinking back all the time to men that she done.
Thank you, Dr. Zeb. We love you. We appreciate you.
I mean it. Love y'all.
And anytime you want to come back, you just let us know. Hey, I just, I want to come on. I got something to say. Just give us a call, send us an email, and say, hey, I have something I want to share with your audience. And I promise you, we will find the time. Okay. We appreciate you, and thank everyone out there for who's been watching.
Yes,
and
thanks
who's
for
been
the comments and engaging us.
Pastor D, we
wonderful.
saw you. We thank you. We think you. We think you back from what was she at?
She went to a
She went to camp. She went to a
Camp.
senior camp. That was cool.
senior camp.
Yes. So anyway, thank you for listening tonight. WVTC Soulful Inspirations. I'm your girl, Nikki Jones. This has been our My Sister, Your Sister podcast, and we out. Peace. Hey.
To my sister.
You've been listening to
Soulful Inspiration.
We're so glad you hung out with us today. We're here every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on WVTC Detroit. If you'd like to partner with us or sponsor a show with your business, send us an email at tntsoulllc@gmail.com, or you can call us at 313-570-8280. I'm your girl,
Nikki Jones.
The views and opinions expressed on the previous broadcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of WVTC Radio Detroit, its advertisers, or affiliates.
Here's just one of the fine programs right here on WVTC Detroit. Hey y'all, summer is coming. We want to remind you of the WVTC. Wash your hands. Stay updated on your vaccinations. If you got a temperature, get a COVID test and cover your cough. We're on a mission, so don't let COVID stop you. Here's just one of the fine programs right here on WVTC Detroit. We are WVTC Detroit. What it is, we're gospel music, preaching, teaching, inspiration, encouragement, news, and guest interviews. We are WVTC. We're winning victories through Christ. WVTC Detroit. All up in the community. That's who we are. What it is.
You're listening to WVTC Gospel Radio Detroit, and we're flowing in the Spirit.